Howdy. Excited to have folks here, and as folks are trickling in, just want to extend a big welcome again. Welcome back to those of you who were in our kickoff yesterday. Nice to see you again. For those who are new, this is your first event. Welcome to Consulting Week. We'll chat more about it as we go through, but it's great to see all of you, yeah, hopefully we can have some good output from the next 45 minutes. We're looking forward to it. As people are trickling in, don't forget to check out the Management Consulting Bootcamp. It's a great way if you're newer to consulting or feel like you just kind of need a kind of comprehensive thing to get yourself up the curve. This is a really great way to do it. I'll probably say this again, but consulting is really competitive. I have a lot of friends who didn't get in, and a lot of people who want to be in there, and it is a competitive process. And so, as I mentioned yesterday, but for those who are new, like, we are trying to give you as much as you can this week. We want to try to equip you with as many free resources as we possibly can to kind of get you up the curve at least a little bit of the way. But then there's also just a lot of work that you got to put in if you want to navigate these really competitive positions. So again, keep us posted on questions you have, but also if you're interested in this boot camp, we are offering $500 off this week. So Amanda will put some of the links in the chat for that. I'm Spencer. I'll introduce myself in just a minute. This is 5 tips to get into Bain. If you're interested in McKinsey or BCG, sorry, you're out of luck. Just kidding. No, but these tips apply to all 3 of the MBBs, but also to a lot of the other tier 2 and tier 3 consulting firms as well. So even if you're interested in boutique consulting, or you're really excited about EY or LEK or some of these other, a lot of the things here are going to apply. I speak from the Bain perspective. I was there for almost 7 years. Again, I'll introduce myself in a minute, but these are kind of my distilled tips from what I've learned throughout this entire process. Feel free to sign up as well for Leland, just to kind of stay in the loop on all the different resources that we have. But our agenda for today is I'll do a quick little welcome, and then I'm going to jump right into the tips and just share as much as I can. If we have time for some Q&A, we will do that. And we'll go from there. As a reminder of the Consulting Week schedule, yesterday we had our kickoff. Today is the first of 4 big events for Consulting Week. This one's 5 tips to get into Bain, but we have some other. This is kind of an overview of both landing the interview and crushing the interview. The upcoming events are going to give, and I'm going to try to give you some detailed things too that I think are really important. But then we have other events that are like, okay, for landing the interview, how do you think about networking? That's a big piece of it, and we have an entire event just dedicated on networking. We've got another one just on resume, cover letter. That'll be really great. And we also have some awesome interview stuff that includes actual mock interviews, which are awesome. It's great to see some of the experts at work. I'm sure a lot of you, if you haven't started casing, you will. But for those of you who have started casing, it's helpful to see so many different perspectives. And it'll be great to see some of the experts at this as well. So we'll have case frameworks and some other things on cases. And then at the end, tomorrow, we have some office hours. So if you have some like general or specific questions on your mind, you can bring those to the office hours and get some of those questions answered. And then a nice kind of event to cap off the week on kind of end-to-end how one of our coaches landed a McKinsey offer in 2 weeks. So that's the schedule. For me, I'm a former Bain interviewer, so I was a senior manager at Bain Company. I was there for almost 7 years. I was early promoted a couple times. I did my business school at Harvard Business School, went back to Bain afterwards. Really loved it. Bain was amazing. I'm also an amateur welder. Not really. I have a bunch of hobbies. I like to weld. I'm not very good, but it's fun. I made some art for my wall, and it was great. I just made a desk, and so I like being involved in a lot of different things. But I love coaching. Coaching is a big part of my life. I've done it a ton while I was at Bain, and a lot while I was in business school as well. It's just fun for me to help people kind of get along the process, and so I've done this a lot. I just joined Leland last year as their head of revenue, and so I've been working a lot on bringing Leland to universities. We've been doing a lot of university partnerships where we can actually help universities give access to Leland coaches more broadly. So if any of you are interested in chatting about that, to bring Leland to your university, we're giving a lot of free resources to the universities. So we can have a conversation about that another day. But it's just been amazing to be able to help here at Leland, like give access to coaching and help and content to be able to navigate really competitive careers, right? And really competitive programs. So that's why you're all here. Amanda will put a link to my chat if you're interested in chatting a little bit more with me specifically. But I would love to get to know all of you a little bit. Where are you working or studying if you're studying right now? And then I was looking at my Spotify Wrapped and I was like, I got to get some new song contents. So if any of you have any great recommendations for songs, just throw those in the chat really quick for me because I need some new content for songs. So I'll just give you all a second to throw in the chat where you're joining from. And if you have a favorite song for me, that would be great. Houston, to know you, I lived in Houston for 4 years. I started in the Bain Houston office. So I'm a big Houston fan. Nigeria, nice, amazing. University of Waterloo, Provo, nice. I went to BYU, Talmadge, so that's nice to have a fellow Cougar. England, Northwestern, Montreal, Mexico, UC Berkeley, nice. Oh, University of Utah, sweet. I went and spoke to the Management Consulting Club at the University of Utah, Hannah. I don't know if you were there, but I spoke there just a couple months ago. So that's great. Lebanon, dang, Georgia State, Tampa, Florida, Ontario. We got people all over the world. This is awesome. San Francisco, London, Atlanta, Buffalo. Okay, nobody's giving me any good songs. I love where you're all from, but I need at least a couple songs at the end of the day so that I can try some of these. Queens, Birmingham. Okay, Reincarnated by Kendrick Lamar. Thank you, Polkita. That's great. That is helpful. Night by Night, Steely Dan. Okay, great. These are awesome. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to review these later on. Okay, you all didn't come here to give me song recommendations, but it is great to know all of you. Let's jump right in. I have interviewed a lot of people at Bain. I was on the recruiting teams early on when I was, an associate and senior associate consultant. So I did a lot of resume reviews and kind of early on in that process. I was kind of head recruiting for my undergrad when I was in the Houston office. And then as I got more senior, especially as a senior manager, I actually conducted a lot of interviews. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of people, both on Zoom and in person. So I've navigated the process. I've seen a lot of examples. And these are my tips for all of you for what I've seen as I've gone through this process, again, with dozens and dozens of people and seen the ones that actually were successful and landed jobs and ones that didn't. There's two major pieces of this. And if you were in our event yesterday, I talked about this a little bit, but there's landing the interview and then there's crushing the interview. These are kind of the summary of the 5 tips, and then I'll kind of go in detail on each one. But classic consulting is I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, and then we're going to recap what I told you, just so that hopefully some of this sticks a little bit and is helpful for you. But number one, be yourself. Be you. Don't be what you think these consulting firms want you to be. I have seen this happen too many times for people who they are desperately trying to be what they think this firm wants them to be, and that ends up translating into them not being themselves. This actually applies to both landing and also crushing the interview. But differentiate yourself by communicating truly yourself on your resume and your cover letter, and be authentic to yourself. Number 2, have an advocate in the room where it happens. Networking is super critical, and it's more critical for certain firms than it is for others. For instance, at Bain, if you have one person in the room where they're actually deciding who do we give an interview slot with, if there's one person in the room who can say, yeah, Eileen, she's fantastic. Faith, absolutely amazing. Charles, we need to give them, I'm just looking at, some of you who are on here. We got to give that person a slot because I've chatted with them a few times, or maybe I've seen their resume or whatever else. I know them a little bit, and we got to give them a chance. If you don't have that person who's an advocate for you in the room where it happens, you still can make it. It's just a little bit more of an uphill battle. And so if you have an advocate, someone in the room who's going to fight for you a little bit, that goes a really long way to actually landing the interview. Once you've landed the interview, the rest is all on you. And so my third tip here for crushing the interview is practice being uncomfortable a lot. I'll kind of share a little bit more detail here, but do practice interviews, not just there's a quantity component and there's a quality component. So you got to do a lot of reps, but you've also got to do reps. Each one of those reps has to have a component that's going to push you to do a little bit better. So if you do 50 reps with a single person and they start to feel the same, you need to start thinking, okay, do I need to practice with someone else? Or if I'm practicing with the same person, how do I have them adjust what they're looking for as they're working with me so that I can push in new dimensions? All the behavioral and the technical interview pieces of consulting are difficult and they're somewhat complex. And so being able to navigate that comfortably is really important, and practice is absolutely critical. Number 4, work together, don't work alone. Be collaborative, structured, be genuine, be transparent, but work together. These interviews are not just meant purely evaluative for you. They're a chance for you to evaluate your interviewer, and they're a chance for you to work together with your interviewer to actually solve a problem. Which leads a little bit into number 5, use game theory, make Bain want you. And one of the pieces of this is to have some healthy skepticism and really evaluate, do you want this job? People who come into consulting who really know the answer to that question, do I really want this? Do a much better job either at avoiding consulting because they actually say, no, I want to go find something else, or they've got a really good reason for why they want to be there, and they're able to evaluate which firm they actually want to go do it at. And again, we'll kind of talk about this in a little bit, but the game theory kind of reverse is, what are they looking for? And how are you, again, there's a little bit of tension between number 1 and number 5. But you do want to think about from their perspective, what are they looking for and how are they thinking? So we'll get into that. So those are my 5 tips. We'll jump into each one here as we go. Again, as you have questions, if there are specific questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. I will try to get to those a little bit as we go. We also might have some time at the end as well to dive into some of those specifically. So number 1, be you. Don't be what you think Bain wants you to be. For here, I would say when it comes, there's kind of 3 major pieces here, and this is classic consulting. You'll see that if you want to be a great consultant, every answer you have, you can say, oh, I'm kind of thinking about this in 3 ways. Number 1, number 2, number 3. That's like classic consultant. If you have consultant friends, you're going to see them do this. I do it all the time. My wife makes fun of me all the time for it. She's like, Spencer, it's like, hey, what do you want to do this weekend? Well, there's kind of 3 different things I'm thinking. It's like, you don't have to think that way, but I'm so trained like that's just what we do in consulting. And so you're going to see that on, like, I think literally all of my slides, there's like 3 elements for each one. So sometimes you kind of have to force fit it in, but if you can start doing this early, you're going to fit right in pretty well with all the consultant friends out here. So number 1, perfect the resume. So you want to be genuine. You want to honestly emphasize aspects that you're most proud of, show it around a lot. One of the pieces here is focus on outcomes and results. Don't just focus on the actions that you took. A lot of the resumes that I see when I go and review resumes, either when I'm like coaching and helping people or when I'm actually seeing them after they've applied, is they talk about all the actions that they took. And really what you want to lead with is, hey, what were the results that came? And then what did I do? You can still talk about actions, but you want those actions to feel different. What did you do that maybe somebody else wouldn't have done if they were in the same position as you? So Alex, CEO, or Juan, Dylan, as I'm seeing a few of your names here, like what did Dylan do in this situation that not the average person would have done in that same situation? And what did it lead to the results that you got? So that's super critical to, like, why did you do better in that role than the average person, and why were you unique? Show it around a lot. Get a lot of feedback. You don't have to take everyone's feedback, but be vulnerable. Throw it up on the altar and ask people, hey, be brutal with me. Throw it in ChatGPT. Say, hey, ChatGPT, be brutal. Be brutal with my resume. What do I got to do better? And you don't have to act on everybody's feedback, but internalize that feedback and then think about, okay, what do I want my resume to accomplish for me? Because your resume is this thread throughout your entire recruiting process that's super important at every single stage. So it's really critical to actually landing the interview, but it also is going to be used throughout the interview processes as well. So show it around a lot. Emphasize aspects that you're most proud of. Make it feel a little unique. There's I think a resume event later on today, so I won't like delve. We could talk for hours about the resume specifically, but people will often ask me, hey Spencer, like should I include like weird things about myself or interests or whatever else? Super tactically, when I sit down in an interview with someone and I'm interviewing them, say, hey, do I want this person to be at Bain or not? I'll have their resume in front of me. And I will, read the top section, read a couple of the headers of the middle section, maybe a bullet here or there. And then tactically, I will jump to the very bottom and I will say, what do I want to chat with this person about for 2 minutes before we actually jump into the interview? And I will look down there to see, hey, is there anything interesting that like, oh, this person's interested in like soccer or disc golf or something like that. Then I'll kind of break the ice and chat with them about that. So people sometimes put way too many things on there. Sometimes people don't put anything down at the bottom. But that's, a section for you to either from a hobbies or interests or kind of personal achievements perspective. What do you want to have a conversation about for 2 minutes? I would kind of emphasize those things and then de-emphasize everything else. So anyway, we're getting into super tactical things. If we had hours to chat about resume, I could jump into all those details. But let's jump to number 2. Write memorably. As when I was reading applications and then even kind of later as I was a recruiter, we read a lot of cover letters. We read a lot of resumes. And you got to make yours stand out in a genuine, interesting way. Cover letters are more important for some firms than others. Do your research to know. I think McKinsey's are optional now. I think Bain's are required. Different firms have kind of different policies. Be intentional, be strategic about if you're going to use one and if you're not for the ones that are optional. And then if you are going to use one, make sure it's genuine and that it stands out in an interesting way. Yeah, I think like for me, I was a little more off the cuff than maybe I should be as I go back and read my cover letters for the firms that I had one. I was maybe a little too casual, but I do think it helped to differentiate me a little bit. I wasn't necessarily the run-of-the-mill, hey, standard, I'm desperate for consulting, please hire me. It was like, hey, I've done these things. Consulting sounds super amazing for XYZ reasons, but like I'm gonna go change the world, and so like would love to do that here. If it's somewhere else, it's somewhere else. But whatever kind of that looks like for you, know that these readers are reading hundreds of these, and if they can't remember, oh yeah, Eileen is this person, that like what's the one thing that they kind of remember. Then you're not going to stand out, right? And it's you're going to kind of just be in that stack of papers that they've read through. And number 3, be you. Like if you love rock hounding, then like love rock hounding. I had one of my close friends, I coached him on his applications for MBA and for some of his consulting help as well. And he loved whitewater rafting. He just like was obsessed with whitewater rafting. And in his essays and even on some of his resume pieces and cover letters, it was so stale. It was so boring. Like he was just like, oh, I really like these pieces of my work and whatever else. And I was like, dude, like talk about things that you love. Now there's a balance here, right? And so be smart about what you share, but also be willing to be a little bit vulnerable. If there are things that you're really passionate about and that you love talking about, then like put them down. My second round interview with Bain, one of those interviews, me and the interviewer just chatted about soccer for like 15 minutes, and it was fantastic. It was like, oh great, our case was a little bit shortened, which was great for me because I was like, oh, this is fantastic. But it was something that I actually cared about. We were talking about different clubs and different whatever, and like I'm not as following soccer as I used to, but like at the time it was just great because I was like, hey, I can chat about this stuff, and I'm showing, and he got to see, oh, this person's energetic, he's interested, whatever, that kind of thing. So if you love whatever you love, try to like make sure to highlight some of those things that you love. Okay, yeah, why 3? Or mostly, it can be 2, it can be 4. It doesn't always have to be 3. I think 3 is just kind of a nice round number or whatever. But generally, when you are coming into interviews, and we'll get to this in a little bit, you do need to be structured. And so whether you're thinking about 2 things or 4 things or 3 or whatever it is, 3 kind of fits nicely on a slide here. I guess I could fit 4 or whatever else, but my mind often just directly goes to 3. Zuri, I don't have a specific slide on cover letters. I think there's an event later today on cover letters specifically, so I would direct you there. We don't have time to delve deep into that one, but yeah, there you go. Yeah, we are definitely recording these sessions. So for those who are interested in the recordings, I think you can sign up, and there should be a link in here. I'll take one more question here, and then I'm going to jump off to the next slide. But GPA matters a decent amount, but it's not the end-all be-all. As people are looking at these applications, they are... So sorry, this is a question from Eileen about GPA. It's similar with standardized test scores. If some of you are interested in MBAs at some point, or some of you are in MBAs, you know this already, but the GMAT or the GRE is an input, and oftentimes there are sort of informal cutoffs or floors that they will look at. A lot of top MBA programs, if you're below a 700 GMAT, they might say, "Ooh, I don't know if we're willing," but it just kind of discounts you a little bit. If you're over that, it's kind of a check mark and you kind of move on. GPA is kind of a similar, where it's, hey, if you're above a, I don't know, 3.8 or whatever the number might be, it's like, okay, great, check mark there. Let's move on to kind of the rest pieces of the application. If you have a lower GPA, you absolutely can get in. And I've seen a bunch of friends, I've seen people do this where they've had a 3.2 or a 3.4 or something like that. They can, it just takes a little bit more work to kind of craft your resume and your cover letter and your kind of whole kind of application and story to be able to do it, but you absolutely can do it. The networking becomes increasingly important. Just the other pieces, if your GPA is lower, the other pieces of the application just become a little bit more important. There is kind of maybe if you're below like if you're in the 2 point something ranges, that gets a little bit like, there are like kind of thresholds below that become really difficult. But for the most part, like if your resume, you haven't had a ton of experience, okay, well, how do we stress? Maybe you do want a cover letter then, and you want to stress different aspects of who you are and whatever else. Networking becomes increasingly important. So there's all sorts of different pieces. Obviously, you want to get all of them up to the best you possibly can to kind of showcase your candidacy. Okay, let's jump on to number 2. Have an advocate in the room where it happens. This is kind of, we talk about networking a lot. I personally, like, when I hear the word network, I'm like, ugh, like, I don't necessarily like that word. It's like it's not the greatest of words, but networking, it can be uncomfortable and it takes work, but you got to reach out. You kind of have to do this process. And it doesn't have to just be networking to network. I think of networking as, how do I build genuine relationships with people? And for those of you who were in the meeting yesterday, I talked a little bit about breadth over depth at first, and then depth over breadth later on in the process. So what that looks like tactically. As you're networking for people and you say, hey, I'm really interested in BCG. I've had a couple conversations about BCG. Oh, BCG sounds really amazing. Cast your net a little bit wide at the beginning as you're recruiting for BCG. Get on LinkedIn, talk to friends of friends, get into your, the different clubs or alumni groups that you may have been a part of, and say, hey, do you know people who work at BCG? And start kind of casting that net decently wide. Have emails and whatever else, and say, hey, do you have 10 minutes to kind of chat? I would just love to get to know you for 10 minutes, or I'd love to take you out for lunch or grab a drink for you or something like that if they're close. Ideally, you're connecting through people those warm connections tend to just be way more fruitful than cold, but try cold too. Breadth over depth at first. Once you've had a few of these interactions, at the end of the day, it actually doesn't matter if you've had a ton of people that kind of know you a little bit. What really matters is having one person in the room where it happens who can fight for you and say, yeah, we got to give this person an offer. And so focus on the one. It's better to go deep than broad, as you like at the end of the day, and find someone who you really connect with and see what you can do to build a relationship. So instead of, again, trying to superficial interactions or trying to force a relationship on somebody, nobody likes a forced relationship on them, right? Actually try to build a genuine relationship. Oh my gosh, you're interested in XYZ. I'm also interested in X, in welding. Like, let's chat about welding a little bit, like, hey, what methods do you use? Or, hey, do you have any YouTube videos that are like great that I should, like build a little bit. It's so much easier to ask for, hey, do you mind doing a case with me? If you have that relationship. If someone comes to me and says, hey, Spencer, can you do a case with me? Like, and I don't know them, I'm like, I'm so sorry, I don't have the time. Like, I'm happy to chat with you for a few minutes, but like, I just don't have the time to do a case with you. If I've like become friends with someone and like I've known them and we've chatted about XYZ, like, I'm very happy. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. I would love to invest 30 minutes or whatever. Or I can direct you to somebody that I know that can help do a case with you and then actually help move the needle. So try to make them genuine relationships. If they feel transactional, it's going to be tricky. Again, there's a networking event later on to talk a little bit more tactically about how to do this stuff. But my third piece is stand out. Like, again, when they're in the room, you want to be able to give them a reason that they can vouch for you. So give them a reason to say, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think we need to give Patrick an offer, or not an offer, but like an opportunity to interview. Maria, like, she absolutely deserves one. And if they don't have that reason, and if you don't know they have that reason, the relationship's not good enough yet, and you can do this in a tactful way. You don't necessarily have to say, hey, like, would you like would you actually tell them that I should get an interview? But you should kind of know, hey, how am I stacking up with other applicants? How am I looking? Based on our couple conversations, based on the case we did, how am I looking? And they can give you like, oh, like you're doing pretty well, And if that's the case, and you're like, oh shoot, maybe I need to do more work. But if they're like, hey, you're doing awesome. Like, I thought the case was really fantastic. That kind of pulse check on the one or two champions that you have will actually be really valuable for you to know, like, before they actually get into the room where it happens, because after that point, the decisions are made, right? So you got to do everything you can before the decision is made to ensure that you feel confident about getting that interview slot. Okay, I'm going to pause just for a second and review some of the chat. Rounding on GPAs, I don't know, like I would leave 3.76. I think 3.76 is fine versus a 3.8. Oh, sorry, I see that was a direct message, but anyway, I think it's fine. Yeah, great. I think just some general questions in here, but I think let's just jump on to the next one. So once you've actually landed the interview, now it's like showtime, right? You've got to demonstrate that, hey, I can actually crush this interview and I can actually do the job. So practice being uncomfortable a lot. Number one, practice. Practice case structuring and process. Do a dozen or more prompts and compare resulting structures. So you got to learn the dance, right? The first time I did a case interview, the interviewer was like, okay, Spencer, here's like the prompt. And I was like, okay. They were like, hey, what would you do? This pharmacy is trying to expand, like, what would you do? And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'd do XYZ. And they were like, no, like, you got to like write things down, And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I was like, okay, I'll write things down. Like, and I was like, this is what I do. And they're like, no, like, this is going to be like a 30-minute process, or a 45-minute process. And so like, you need to be able to structure your thoughts and whatever. And I was like, oh, like, okay, I understand now, like, what we're actually doing here. I'm sure all of you have had similar stories to some degree of your very first case, and maybe the little bit of a disaster that it was. But practice the case structuring, practice the prompts, compare your structures. We'll chat more about structures again in future events, but for structures, know them, but don't always use them in every single case. So you want to be able to answer the question at the end of the day, and structures can help to answer that questions. But if you become a robot and you say, oh, this is a profitability case, I know the structure for that. This is the structure, blah, 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 blah. They're like, great, that's what every other person did. Move along, right? What you want to say is, how do I bring my personal spin to these? Now, you can still use the same structure. And if you say, hey, I'm just using the same stock structure at the highest level, fine. But then like spice it up and make it feel unique and interesting and come with, nice, thoroughly thought through, that's a great alliteration, output and results that you have on here. But I think I just see a lot of people, they think of, oh, what structure should I use? Oh, this one. Okay, boom. I answered the question. It's like, no, like, answer the question, use structures if you need to. Number two, practice case drills, brainstorming, get good at generating structured bucket types. So frequently in consulting, you're going to be asked to kind of think about, brainstorm, hey, what are some ideas we could increase profitability? Or what are some ideas we could decrease costs here? Or what are some ideas of potential markets we could go into? If you get good at practicing generating lists of ideas and then structuring those ideas, for cost, there's kind of three ways I'm thinking about how we could reduce costs. Boom, 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 boom. Or hey, for markets we could go into, there's kind of three ways I'm thinking about, or two ways, whatever the number is. I'm thinking about how to, we could go geographically, we could go company type or whatever, and then here are all my ideas inside of that. Practice doing that a lot. It's a muscle. It needs to be practiced. But as you do it, you're going to get really good at it. Third, practice resume questions and fit questions. People will often ask you, hey, tell me about, this bullet on your resume here, or tell me about your best experience at this company. You need to make sure you have some stories, some things in your back pocket that you can rely on to be able to illustrate who you are and what you've done based on those kind of questions that come. So you should practice and say, okay, I've got 4, 5, 6, 8 stories kind of that I'm ready to tell At the very least, have one story for each one of the companies you've worked at or each one of the major pieces on your resume. Like have something kind of in your back pocket. Answer their question. So don't just like pull out a story based on anything, but like if they have a specific question and you have some of these stories in your arsenal and you've practiced those, they can be really powerful ways for you to kind of illustrate your experiences and other things like that. And so definitely practice those and work with people who will push you to make your answers compelling. My brother actually was really helpful for me with this specific process. I was practicing, I said, hey, can you practice some of these behavioral questions with me? And I gave him some questions. He asked me some of the questions. And afterward, he's like, Spencer, you sound like such a robot. He's like, doesn't sound like you at all. And it was great because he knew me. He's like, hey, I know, he knew my personality. We've grown up together. And he was able to say, hey, look, maybe you got the answers right to like whatever, but like it didn't sound like you at all. Like it. And so he pushed me to say, how do you be myself more? How do I maybe reframe some of these answers or use some of the building blocks to actually make this illustrative and compelling? So practice, 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 super, super critical. Let's jump on to this next one and talk about, yeah, working together. So when you're in the interview, a lot of people think of the interview relationship as they are a judge and I am their judgee. They're judging me on like, oh, am I good or not? If you view your interviewer as an intimidating judge, you will be intimidated by them. So don't be intimidated. View this person as a member of your team, as a collaborative member. Now, you're on the hook to drive. And again, Bain, McKinsey, BCG have slightly different flavors of how to drive the case. How much is interviewer-led versus interviewee-led? That's important to know as you're going through this process. But at the end of the day, for all of these, you're in the driver's seat and you're the person who's like, you need to come up with the answers, you need to come up with the structures, you need to like drive the thinking. But you can also view this person as a collaborative part of the team, maybe a person even on your team that reports to you. Hey, or maybe a person at the client who you can ask questions to. What that looks like tactically is, hey, here's how I'm thinking about the question you just asked me. Do we have any data on this piece, or would you like me to like make some assumptions? Or hey, is there anything else I should know about, this specific thing that would be helpful to as like context for this piece? Oh, no? Okay, great. Then here's how I'm thinking about it. Or yeah, do we have any data? Oh, we do? Okay, great. Yeah, what data do we have? And they may share some of that. View them as like a collaborative thought partner through this process and you'll perform much better. So ask questions, align on objectives. Hey, it sounds like what we're really trying to find out is how do we reduce costs, not just general profitability. We don't really have much room over pricing. Is that right? Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, great. Fantastic. Ask questions, align on objectives, especially if you get stuck. This is a great tactic and tip that I do a lot. If I ever feel stuck or if people are asking me, hey, sometimes I just get stuck in an interview. Often it can be great to just level set for a second and say, hey, I know we're deep into this math specific question about contribution margin and whatever else. Just to pull back just for a second, our main objective is we're trying to reduce costs in this specific department, and we're trying to do that through these couple different mechanisms. Is that right? Yes. Oh, okay, great. Okay, let's jump back into the contribution margin. Okay, yeah, whatever. The kind of pulling back to align on the objectives is a helpful way to make sure that they know you're thinking about the overall problem and that you're actually, and it gives you a second to maybe kind of re-get your thoughts together and kind of level set on where you want to go and maybe what the math you need to go do. Number two, voice your thinking. Talk through how you're thinking about everything. Let them see how your mind works. You can ask for time, right? If you say, hey, can I have, 30 seconds to think about this? You can totally do that. Be careful about how often you do that. Sometimes when I'm interviewing people, I'll say, yeah, for sure, go ahead. Sometimes if they ask me 2 or 3 times, I'll be like, no, I just want to see how you're thinking on the spot. And I will lower my bar a little bit when I do that. I'll be like, okay, like, I recognize that if they had a second to structure, then like maybe they do a little bit better. But I sometimes also want to see how they're thinking off the cuff. But generally, if you want to ask for 30 seconds or a minute to kind of structure some of your thoughts, usually I will allow it. A lot of times interviewers will allow it. So totally do that. But don't just go away forever and then come back and say, here's the answer. You've got to talk through how you're thinking about everything. The goal of this interview is for them to see how your mind works. They don't necessarily need to know like technically how much have you memorized or how many different frameworks do you actually know. What they want to see is, oh, when there is a problem, how do they break it down? Consulting is so cool because CEOs and executives of huge companies, when they have their biggest problems, they call consultants. There are memes about consultants. I'm sure you've all seen them about like, do consultants actually add value or not, or whatever. At the end of the day, like companies are still calling consultants, and McKinsey, Bain, BCG are still growing like crazy. And so like there are huge, difficult problems that these CEOs are facing. If they were pretty simple problems, they'd hire some people, they'd solve it, they'd get some resources against it, and it would be fine. They bring in consultants for really difficult problems that don't have just like, oh yeah, easy solution here. Now, again, we have structures, we have frameworks, we have approaches that are helpful. But at the end of the day, what an interview is looking for is, hey, when I put them in front of a really difficult problem, how are they going to think about it? How are they going to approach it? Are they just going to say, oh, what framework is the perfect framework? Or, oh, what's the perfect brainstorming list that I memorized in the past? No, they're going to say, oh, how are they thinking about this way? And so if you're not communicating how you're thinking about the problem, they're not going to know that. So talk through everything, let them see how your mind works. Finally, be structured. Here's a 3 within a 3. It's everywhere, but MISI is real. It's actually like being mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive is actually really important. It's okay to ask for a minute to think. So, you know, if you do feel like, hey, I could brainstorm just a bunch of things, but I could make this brainstorming list a little bit more structured if I asked for 30 seconds. You can say, hey, give me 30 seconds. I've got a bunch of ideas that are coming to my head. I'd love to just kind of structure them in a couple buckets or whatever. And you can, like, it's okay to ask for a minute to be able to do that. And then finally, everything can be structured into 3 buckets. I know I'm pounding this or feeding this fed horse to use the PETA analogy or whatever, but truly, like, figure out how to bucket things. It's important when you're brainstorming. It's important when you're structuring. Being able to bucket things into different categories. It's not just like a random trick. It's actually really useful for solving problems. If you can actually delineate, hey, what's related to this problem? Oh, these different pieces are related to this problem. Oh, great. These different pieces are related to this problem. It actually helps you to break down extremely complex problems into slightly less complex buckets of problems. And then you can break those down further and say, okay, well, how do we resource against this? Or what are the processes we need to put in place? Or who do we need to hire to be able to go solve these different things? So it's not just a random, consulting trick. It actually is really useful in being able to break down and solve complex problems. All right, last one, and then I can jump over to the chat. I know there's a bunch of questions in there, so I'll jump in there if we have a couple minutes here at the end. Number 5, use game theory, make Bain, make McKinsey, make them want you. One of the biggest things is to have some healthy skepticism. So first is evaluate yourself. Like, do you actually want this job? Consulting's amazing. I loved it. It's not for everybody. And I was there for almost 7 years, and I left. I felt like, hey, I'm ready. I want to go build something else now. But I thought I'd be a 2 and done. I was there for 7 years. Like, I loved it. And for those who want to chat, about like why it's so great, I can chat more about that. But truly, it's an incredible job. It gets you exposure to so many different companies and different types of problems. You're interacting with extremely senior leaders of massive organizations, and you just learn a ton. You're able to like sink your teeth into really tough problems and go solve them, and it's extremely satisfying. It's also difficult, and it is stressful, and sometimes you're traveling a lot. Sometimes you're working, super late. It's a client-facing job, and so you're super stressed at 11 p.m. Like, I can talk about the ugly too. This job is tough, but it's very lucrative. It can pay really well. It's extremely, it can be very stable, and the compensation curve is extremely fast. Every year you spend there, as you get promoted, you can make a lot of money. So there's a lot of good reasons to be there, but there's also a lot of reasons why you may not want consulting. And ask questions, talk to people about it, have some healthy skepticism. And at the end of the day, remind yourself that you're going to be fine. Even if consulting is not part of your journey, go change the world. Like, don't let consulting be the gatekeeper of whether you get to go change the world or not. Go change the world, go make a difference. And if consulting is a part of that, fantastic. If it's not, you're going to go change the world anyway. And I think having that, and now again, don't be prideful. Don't walk in there and say, hey, I'm like the whatever. But like, but have a little bit of that attitude of like, you're going to be okay, and you're going to go conquer the world. The analogy sometimes I'll use is like dating. If you are desperate, and you're trying to date somebody and you're super, super desperate, they think, and if anyone has been super desperate to date you in the past, you're kind of like, oh, maybe I can do better because this person's pretty desperate, right? That's the game theory piece of this, right? If you come across as super desperate to these companies, well, they're going to be like, I could probably do better. Maybe subconsciously they're going to think that, right? Now, again, you don't want to come across as a prideful person. That will backfire on you very fast. If you come across as super prideful or like you know everything, that will backfire extremely fast. But do be confident in yourself, and say, hey, I actually want to know, do I want this job? And think about some of the questions you can ask your interviewers that might do that. This is number 2, ask honest questions. Hey, how have you been able to navigate having a family and working in consulting? Hey, what has been hard about this job? Hey, what have you loved about this job? Why have you stayed in consulting so long? Again, you can think about, there are stock questions, there are different categories of questions. Think about the ones that you actually care about and that you're thinking about for consulting, and ask those, and have be ready to ask those in the interview itself. And then number 3, know your value. Like, why should Bain want you? Why should McKinsey want you? Again, don't be prideful, but know what your value is, and know that, hey, I'm a good person, and I'm a hard worker, and I think smartly, and I think strategically, and like I can break down problems, and I'm scrappy. I can go figure things out. If you have those attitudes and that mentality, know that about yourself and say, hey, and if I can do it here, I'd love to do it here. That'd be amazing. And if not, if it's somewhere else, I'm going to go like change their company and make a massive difference there. I think know your value, and be confident in it is actually super, super critical to navigating this whole process. So number 5 is use game theory and make Bain want you. I'm just going to jump back to our kind of top slide just to kind of recap everything. But number 1, be you, don't be what Bain thinks, or what you think Bain wants you to be. Number 2, have an advocate in the room where it happens. If you do those 2 things really well, again, building out the networking piece of all of this, the resume piece of all this, there's all those different pieces. But if you do those 2 things really well, you'll greatly increase your chances to land an interview. 3, practice being uncomfortable a lot. 4, work together, don't work alone. 5, use game theory, make Bain want you. If you do those 3 things in the interview, you will greatly increase your chances in actually navigating it. Behind all of these tips is a mountain of work that you need to go do. I said this yesterday, but if you're smart and you're hardworking, that's not enough to get a job at some of these companies. What you need is a strategy. This is, getting a job here in these competitive fields is like a game. And if you don't have a clear strategy, if you're a football player and you're out there just working, but you're just like running around in circles, or you're not actually like contributing to the team, well, that's not going to be helpful. Even if you know the game super well, if you don't have a strategy that's aligned like with yourself and all the other pieces, like you're not going to perform very well. So have a strategy as you're coming into this stuff. Again, like I'll plug Leland because I work here and I actually know that like the value is really important. If you want to work with a coach, you absolutely should. For those who are really serious about this process, get help, whether that's paid help through Leland or whether that's free help through your friends, whatever else. Do both. Do as much as you can. Get scrappy. But at the end of the day, if you're really serious about wanting this, like you're going to need help from people. For those of you who already have access to people who can help you through this process and give you really good feedback and, help strategize with you and build that plan, fantastic, use them. For those of you who don't or want some incremental help, like here at Leland, we can help. I'm happy to jump on a call with you. If you're not sure where to start, I would direct you to this second link that Amanda's going to post about scheduling a call with someone on our sales team. They are much more adept at being able to like evaluate what you need and line you up with a coach who's perfect for you. I've worked with a lot of people, but I also have a narrow experience, and we have 1,500 coaches on the platform, and one of them will be probably really fantastic and perfect for you. Maybe has a similar background as you, maybe is exactly at the company you want to go work for, or even in the industry that you want to work at the consulting firm that you want to work for. So I'd highly recommend scheduling a call with someone to be able to kind of figure out, hey, what's the game plan that you want to do? I realize we just have a couple questions or a couple minutes left. I realize there's been some great chat stuff going on here, and other people have also answered some of these questions as well, which is great. We love to see that. And a few of you are connecting on LinkedIn. Congratulations. There's some nice free help for all of you. Yeah, let's see. Being on the beach or on the bench, not a bad thing. It can be great. If you're on it for too long, it can be not great, but for a short period, it's not too bad. Happy to chat more in detail about that specifically. Maybe I'll end on this last biggest misconception, biggest maybe mistake to prevent. I think I tried to kind of allude to a lot of these in my tips overall. But I think the biggest thing, number one, the biggest thing that the mistake they make is under preparation. I think a lot of people might come into this process thinking, oh, this will be easy. And it's not. It's difficult. There's a lot to do. And so under preparation is number one. The second is over preparation or over panicking, or like over stressing about it. And it's a close second. But people who do recognize, oh, this is serious, this is important, sometimes they stress themselves out and they're not actually able to be themselves in the interview. They built such an amazing foundation on their resume and their cover letter and their networking strategies, and then in all of their case prep and their behavioral prep. And then they actually get to the interview and they freeze up and they panic because they were so like stressed out about it. And that's another huge mistake that I see people make. And so you also have to work on that and say, how do I practice being uncomfortable? How do I relax? How do I make sure that I feel content about wherever I go and I can actually be myself in those interviews? So those are kind of maybe the two biggest mistakes that I see. I realize we're a couple minutes over time. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Best of luck in this process. It's crazy, it's difficult, but it's also a game. Like, good luck to all of you. I wish you the best. I hope Leland can be helpful. Attend more of the events that we have throughout this week. Again, we're trying to equip you with as much as we can. And if you're looking for more like in-depth help, if you're really serious about it, consider grabbing a coach as well. So thanks everyone for joining. And again, best of luck.